Alright guys, so we probably got one of the greatest endings to a Flash episode earlier this week in the most recent episode of Season 4 titled Don't Run. Now if you haven't seen the episode, then you probably shouldn't be watching this video just yet because of spoilers and all that, but at the same time it's been out for a few days, so what are you waiting for? Anyways, let's recap. At the very end of the episode, we saw DeVoe swap bodies with a new metahuman nicknamed Brainstorm and leave his old body in Barry and Iris's apartment, where the cops show up and arrest Barry, which obviously will kickstart the trial of the Flash storyline. Now what makes this really cool is how we got some foreshadowing about this back during the beginning of the season.
Your Honor, I'm innocent. I didn't do this. I didn't kill anyone.
And even all the way back in the season 1 finale when Barry was running back in time. Seriously, this is awesome. Now obviously there's going to be some parts of the story being updated by the writers for TV, like for instance in the original story, Barry was put on trial for the murder of the Reverse Flash, whereas here he's on trial for the murder of Clifford DeVoe. We also saw Abracadabra manipulating the court to try to screw over Barry in the comics, but I don't think we're going to see him pop up again on TV. I feel like that's just going to take away from DeVoe being the super smart big bad this season. Now one thing I noticed that the comics and the show seem to have in common is how in the promo for the next episode, we saw Cecile pushing for Barry to reveal his identity as the Flash in court as part of a plan to prove his innocence.
This is the only way. Tell everyone you're the Flash.
In the comics, Cecile was Barry's lawyer like in the show, and also pushed for him to unmask himself during the trial, which would have worked with the angle she was arguing, but Barry had surgeons in Gorilla City change his face, so he looked different in court when they took his mask off. Now obviously the show isn't going to play out exactly like that if Barry does reveal his identity, because, you know, that's ridiculous, but he could use HR's face changing thing to get the same effect, right? Either way, I'm super excited to see the story play out on TV. But at the same time, I'm just a little bit skeptical about how the trial factors into DeVoe's overall plan. I mean, just going off of what we've seen so far, Barry literally could not go to jail based on what DeVoe left in his apartment. Actually, no, scratch that. Let me backtrack and rephrase. He could go to jail, but he wouldn't be in there for long. I mean, no offense to the fastest mind alive, but there's just way too much evidence going against the idea that Barry killed DeVoe. First off, how about the fact that the crime was set up at Barry's apartment? Remember, DeVoe already had a restraining order on him at this point.
You are in violation of a restraining order, Mr. Allen.
So why was he even there in the first place? I guess you could argue Barry lured him there saying he wants to apologize or whatever, but actually being there is a little bit out of character for somebody who's supposed to be afraid of Barry to the point where he and his wife both filed a complaint and got a restraining order.
They just filed a complaint against you. Said you harassed them.
Plus, there's no evidence on Barry that any kind of a struggle took place. There's no blood, no torn clothing, nothing. And speaking of blood, what about the trail of dripped blood on the floor? Remember, DeVoe can't walk, so if there was going to be a trail of dripped blood, this dude either would have had to have been stabbed while standing up, then falling over dead, which we know can't happen since he's, you know, paralyzed, or been stabbed while being carried to that specific spot on the floor where he ended up dying. Of course, he could have left a trail if he crawled on the floor, but if that happened, wouldn't you think the trail would look more smeared or something? And what about the fact that any examination on DeVoe's body is obviously going to reveal a ton of weird stuff about him, like, oh, I don't know, his exposed brain? That might set off some red flags for a few people, I think. Then there's the lack of a wheelchair. Like I mentioned before, DeVoe can't walk. We've only seen him getting around in the present in a wheelchair or in this flying Professor X looking thing. And on top of that, DeVoe's interacted with a ton of other people while also sitting in his wheelchair, so it's not exactly like he's hiding the fact that he can't walk. How did he get to Barry's apartment without it? Oh, I know, somebody could argue that Barry kidnapped him and stuck him in the trunk of his car, right?
The excuse he gave last time was car trouble. Wanna know why that one was particularly memorable?
I do not own a car.
Oh yeah, that's right, everybody knows he doesn't have a car. And finally, what about the lack of witnesses placing Barry at the scene during the murder? Remember, there's a room full of people who could swear up and down that Barry was with them the entire time. Of course, their testimonies might not hold too much weight since they're friends and family, and somebody could argue they're covering for him, but still, it's something. Seriously, what's the story DeVoe is trying to go with? That Barry Allen, a CSI with no previous history of violence, somehow got over to DeVoe's house, kidnapped him without a struggle, took him from his house either on foot or using public transportation, brought him all the way back to his apartment, and then just stabbed him without getting any blood on him whatsoever, all before triggering his own alarm? I don't know about you guys, but this is clearly not the planning of either a stalker or a killer, especially when the accused stalker slash killer is somebody who literally solves murders for a living. This whole thing is so clearly a setup, it's insane. Now, it's because of all this stuff that I personally can't see Barry going to prison for a while, which is weird because it seems like that's what DeVoe wants, right? Why else would he leave a dead body in Barry's apartment and frame him for murder? Leaving a ton of flimsy evidence just doesn't fit with the idea of a villain who plans out literally everything to the tiniest decimal.
There is not a decimal, a fraction, an infinitesimal variable beyond my thought.
Then again, what if that's the point? What if Barry going to prison isn't the end goal, and the real goal is just to keep him tied up with something for a while so DeVoe can work on this enlightenment thing he and his wife talk about? Or what if this part of the plan was to get Barry to reveal himself as the Flash to the public? We already know Cecile wants to unmask Barry, and pretty much everything Barry could use to prove his innocence, like, say, phone records.
3 months ago, you emerged from the Speed Force a new man.
could be used to reveal his identity. I don't really see how that ties into any of the other details we already know about DeVoe's plan, like how the metahumans from the bus are involved, but I guess DeVoe could have planned something like this out. At the very least, we know that part of the plan isn't to take over Barry's body, since DeVoe made it sound like Brainstorm's powers were the only reason he was able to transfer into that body in the first place.
Only your unique abilities will allow me to do this.
I don't know about you guys, but he doesn't seem like he'd be able to take Barry's body without Barry also having those types of powers. And even if he could, then what's the point of getting him arrested and ruining his reputation? Why not just leave him alone, ambush him at night or something, and then swap bodies with him? I guess we'll figure it out when the Flash returns from its mid-season break. Either way, that's my take on the trial of the Flash and how it could fit into DeVoe's overall plan. If you guys agree with anything I've said in this video, or you have your own theories you want to throw out there, then go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, I will see you all next time. Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to click that like button, maybe leave me a comment while you're at it, and go ahead and click that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to check out any of my social media pages. I've got a Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram. All those links are going to be in the description below. And I've also got my last video right there in the middle of your screen, so if you want to check that out, go ahead and click it, check it out. Alright, and I will see you all next time.